sources of energy. As they do so, they do need to have the hope and the trust that their generation and input into the transmission is going to be well managed. Through the Energy Action Plan that I announced in 2022, we have brought an end to load shedding and ensured a reliable supply of electricity. This is essential to allow businesses to operate and make decisions to invest. Regulatory reforms in the electricity sector have already unlocked a significant and growing pipeline of investment, with more than 220 gigawatts of renewable energy projects in development and 36 gigawatts already in the grid connection process. Now, over the next 5 years, we will add massive new solar, wind, and battery storage capacity to transition our economy towards cheap green energy and sources at scale. We are now moving rapidly to establish a competitive wholesale electricity market and to complete the unbundling of Eskom through the establishment of a fully independent transmission operator. Now, at the same time, we are moving to enable private investment in expanding our transmission network through independent transmission projects for the first time. Our Minister of Electricity and Energy is working diligently to make sure that this happens. Transitioning to a low-carbon, climate-resilient economy and a society remains a priority, and it is in line with our international climate commitments that we made at the United Nations, as well as our ambitious nationally determined contribution to combat climate change. Decarbonisation, as it is the pillar of our investment strategy, will create new investors, new industries rather, new jobs, and new opportunities in green hydrogen, battery storage, electric vehicle manufacturing, and in the manufacture of components and infrastructure that is decarbonizing the world urgently. The 29 billion in confirmed renewable energy investment today is really a vote of confidence in our rapidly transforming energy sector. South Africa's abundant mineral reserves make us uniquely placed to leverage the growing global demand for critical minerals needed for clean energy, for hybrid, electric, and new energy vehicles, technological applications, and by other heavy industries. Now, as the producer of more than 70% of the world's platinum group metals, and with some of the world's largest manganese and chrome reserves, we are well positioned as a strategic partner in this rapidly growing sector. We've been firm that the energy transition must be just and that it should leave no one behind. And this is important for us because there are communities, there are workers who could be left behind as we transit to renewable energies. And our view is that we need to take them along. They must find new jobs. They must be retrained. They must be uptrained and upskilled. Our Just Energy Transition Investment Plan of 2023-2027 is a blueprint for decarbonizing our economy and achieving energy security, whilst at the same time supporting affected communities and industries. Efficiency in the network industries is the backbone of a competitive economy. As we have done with the electricity sector, we are driving a series of reforms in the logistics sector to build world-class rail networks and ports that are efficient, that are competitive, and that will support our exports. The cornerstone of our reform program is the National Rail Policy, complemented by the National Freight Logistics Roadmap that has been crafted. These policies enable private investment in port and rail operations. And this is where we've crafted an environment where the public sector and the private sector can work together, side by side, to create value for our country. Last year, we also signed a 25-year concession for the Durban Container Terminal Pier 2, representing 11 billion in private investment in one of South Africa's and most critical logistic nodes. A transparent and effective regime for third-party access to the freight rail network is now in place. And now this is a demonstration by South Africa that we're willing and open to working with the private sector so that there can be mutual benefit for all. 41 freight rail slots have been allocated to private train operating companies, and we expect the first private operator to commence operations in 2027. By ending inefficient monopolies and introducing competition, we will reduce the cost of electricity, of transport over time, enabling our manufacturing and mining, agriculture, and other industries to thrive and to compete, rather than just to continuously rely on one monopoly. With one monopoly, innovation is quite lacking. With one monopoly, there are inefficiencies that come in. So with diverse operators, we find competition actually has greater benefits. Digital transformation holds significant potential for economic growth and investment. South Africa already has world-class digital infrastructure, near universal internet access and smartphone penetration, and a regulatory environment that enables innovation. We're implementing reforms that will create a digitally enabled economy and position our country as a leading hub for digital and financial services. In these ways, we are positioning South Africa to become a major player in the economy of the future, combining the lowest cost solar and wind power in the world with advanced digital infrastructure and a skilled workforce that can compete at a global level. The water sector is another area where we need to focus more intently. And we have the reliable water access governed by an equitable, transparent regulatory regime is key for business stability, and we have put in place a set of interventions to transform the provision as well as the management of water services across the country. We are a water-scarce country and have therefore needed to pay closer attention to the water challenges. We are prioritizing reforms at the provincial and local government level in both the immediate and long term that will create a sustainable, well-functioning water system. First, we are establishing professionally run water utilities in all of our 8 metropolitan cities, with water revenues ring-fenced properly and invested back into maintaining and expanding water infrastructure. Secondly, we are establishing a robust regulatory framework to ensure that water service providers do perform their functions effectively. We have embarked on a massive water infrastructure build program, including dam construction, distribution infrastructure, upgrades, bulk water expansion, and desalination. One such project is phase 2 of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project that is targeted for completion by 2028. I often say to the Prime Minister of Lesotho that God and Providence has given them something free that just falls on their mountains, and they now sell it to us. I say, this is extraordinary. What you get free from nature, you now package to sell to us. But I also say to him, but it gets worse. You then ask us to come and build the dam and build the channels to bring free water to Gauteng, to Johannesburg, and then you want money for it. And he says, that's what small countries do. So that's the advantage they have. So we do buy water from Lesotho, and these projects will be overseen by a new National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency. The water sector is ripe for investment, and we have set up a dedicated water partnership office to facilitate private sector participation in areas such as reducing non-revenue water, investing in wastewater treatment, water desalination, and reuse of water, with more than 50 billion rand in projects already in development. So great opportunities are abundant there. Our structural reform agenda has laid the foundations, and now we are harnessing its momentum. We are embarking on the largest and most ambitious cycle of infrastructure investment in our country's history. Infrastructure, as I often say, is the flywheel that propels economic growth. It boosts productivity, it propels trade and reduces the cost of doing business. It creates immediate and meaningful employment opportunities at scale. With this unprecedented investment, we are kickstarting the cycle. Over the next 3 years, the state has budgeted for the investment of more than 1 trillion rand, or approximately $58 billion in modernizing and expanding public infrastructure across our country. This includes 950 billion rand in planned infrastructure investment. Spending as much as 375 billion has been allocated to state-owned enterprises to support, maintain, and upgrade, and also expand infrastructure facilities. In addition to this, our state-owned enterprises have allocated for major infrastructure projects for the medium term. The South African National Road Agency will be investing between 300 and 400 billion for upgrading and maintaining our national road infrastructure. Up to 250 billion is being invested in ports and logistics and modernization, which is driven by our state-owned enterprise Transnet. The Port of Durban, the busiest port on the continent, is being expanded to handle high container volumes and to improve efficiency with similar upgrades in Cape Town, Port of Ngqura, and Eastern Cape. We will be allocating a total of approximately 420 billion to the Passenger Rail Agency for rebuilding corridors and a multi-year rolling stock program. As I indicated earlier, the water sector has been earmarked for substantial public investment, with projects in the pipeline, including the Olifants River Management model and the Limpopo and Mkomazi Dam, which is linked to phase 2 of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. Over the next 3 years, we will be investing more money in energy generation to support the Department of Energy's roadmap for long-term energy security. Other projects in the investment pipeline are to upgrade our airports and to ensure that our airports that are busier than many others have sufficient investments and are also able to improve their own logistics. And in doing so, we're moving forward one project at a time. One project of which we are particularly proud is the 5 billion rand investment of extending capacity of the square kilometer array, the telescope project in the Karoo, in the Western Cape region, Northern Cape really. The SKA is currently building 2 supercomputers that, once completed, will be the most and will be amongst the fastest computers in the world. This isn't just a statement to the value of strategic public investment in digital infrastructure. It is also the reflection of South Africa's scientific excellence and world-class scientific research output. And this showcases South Africa, that South Africa is up there with many other countries. And to get this facility, we competed with countries such as Australia, the UK, Canada, and a number of other countries. And in the end, it was brought here. And it is a true wonder to see. And it is in none other place than South Africa, one of the smallest countries in the world. And we are proud of that. And it is almost like in the desert, in the hottest place in our country. And these magnificently big telescopes, they just scan the whole universe and keep on producing some of the most outstanding photographs of what happens or continues to happen in the outer space. And now for them to build one of the biggest and fastest computers is something that possibly could never have been thought of to come out of Africa. In my State of the Nation address last month, I said that we will be utilizing innovative funding methods that will reduce and attract investors to fast-track investment infrastructure projects. One of these is the infrastructure fund that we established out of the need to deploy blended finance to infrastructure development. Last year, the fund approved blended finance projects with a combined value of approximately 38 billion in water and sanitation, student accommodation, health, energy, and transport. Last year, we also issued regulations for public-private partnerships in support of attracting more private sector participation investment in national infrastructure build. Last year, we also deployed innovative instruments such as the credit guarantee vehicle to de-risk private investment in infrastructure. Now, as South Africa, we remain committed to staying the course on fiscal discipline and to accelerating momentum of the reform agenda. The Minister of Finance, in announcing his budget this year, focused on the issue of fiscal discipline, and that is what we are irrevocably committed to, but also to leverage investments to build an economy that is inclusive, that is transformed, and that benefits all South Africans. Unlike the economies that we had under apartheid that just benefited a few. The transformation of our economy is necessary to drive sustained growth, reduce inequality, and correct the imbalances and injustices of the past. We are undertaking a review to refine, to realign, and strengthen our broad-based Black economic empowerment framework to ensure that it supports transformation while at the same time enabling investment and growth. There are those who say it is an impediment to investment, and we say it is actually one of the key ingredients that will enhance investment and growth as well. Now, Black economic empowerment provides a foundation for inclusive growth by expanding participation in the economy and then enabling us to harness the skills and contribution of all South Africans, What makes South Africa's empowerment laws distinct is that they are practical and innovative. They are inclusive, and they give a clear guarantee to everyone that growth should be shared. In addition to pure equity participation measures, we also have what we call an equity equivalent investment program, the EEIP. Now it was created to accommodate multinational companies whose global practices or policies prevent them from complying with our empowerment laws of ownership, and to invest in socio-economic and skills development as well as enterprise development without having to sell equity in their local subsidiaries. Since its inception, the EEIP has onboarded some of the world's leading multinational firms who have leveraged the program to direct investment in local development, to incubate Black, youth, and women-owned businesses, and to fund skills development. And what they have done through this, they have made themselves a truly South African corporate citizen. Our overriding objective is to support firms with compliance and to embrace empowerment as a meaningful investment in South Africa's long-term economic stability. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, we would like investments that are made should in the end deliver measurable benefits, not only to one segment, the stakeholders in business, but to all. Investment projects must include clear local content plans, formal skills transfer initiatives, community development commitments, and transparent environmental safeguards. The skilling of our people, especially young people, is critical as we embark on the skills revolution, which is underpinned by a dual training system that we are embarking on now. We are expanding programs that will link training with universities and colleges and companies to create the pipeline of technicians and project managers and engineers that are needed in our economy. This is but an overview of the scale of the deep transformative changes that are taking place in South Africa, in our economy, as we seek to position ourselves as an investment destination. Now, the progress continues to be acknowledged by our international and continental development partners. During G20 presidency that South Africa had the privilege of leading, we concluded a clean trade and investment partnership with the European Union, valued at approximately 12 billion euros, which amounts to about 237 billion South African rands. And this was around the just energy transition, infrastructure, skills, pharmaceutical, manufacturing, and other sub-industries. This African Development Bank has also confirmed 20 billion rand for the 2026 financial year, directed at infrastructure, energy transition, human capital, and governance. In addition, the SA-AfriExim investment facility, anchored by the AfriExim Bank, has put forward or made a commitment for 176 billion rand to South Africa, a structural instrument that will channel patient, concessional capital into the sectors where the second drive requires most. The new development bank, the BRICS Bank, has also indicated that they will make approximately 34 billion rand available for 26-27 period. At standard leverage ratios, the development finance institutions' commitments alone can mobilize between 393 billion rand and 786 billion in additional private investment over the drive horizon. This is what partnerships at scale looks like. And this is the type of partnership that we appreciate here in South Africa. So this year's South Africa Investment Conference marks the formal transition from recovery to expansion, from rebuilding confidence to accelerating growth in our economy. I have laid out just some of the sectors of our economy that are ripe for investments. There are many more. Extensive opportunities also exist in agriculture, in agro-processing, in professional and financial services, in property, in digital technologies, advanced manufacturing and other high-growth industries. Now, to crowd in investments across the breadth and the range of South African economy, today we are formally launching the second presidential investment mobilization drive with a target of 2 trillion rand in new investment over the next 5 years. The last time we said 1.2 trillion. Now, I think we are being too modest by saying we want 2 trillion. I think it should be a lot higher. But I want to hear what your thoughts are. And your thoughts will be exemplified to me by making commitments that will just top the 2 trillion. In the midst of what South Africa requires to achieve meaningfully, we need to address the challenges that we face, unemployment, and to industrialize our country at scale, and to lead Africa's green transition, and to build the infrastructure on which our people's future depend. We do so with a keen appreciation of the current state of the foreign direct investment climate. Across the continent, Africa as a whole accounts for only 4% of global FDI, and recent increases have been driven largely by once-off mega projects such as the $35 billion development in Egypt, and they will also be driven by the Lobito corridor investment. Although we remain a significant continental player, accounting for between 15% and 20% of Africa's total FDI, our growth depends heavily on domestic investment. The opening position of the second drive of this investment process is 415 billion rand confirmed fixed investment and 479.8 billion of DFI being announced in this room today. So what all this amounts to, just in this one shot, we are going to hear investments that will be announced here as commitments, as real investments that will go on South African ground that will total 889.8 billion rand that are going to be announced today. Now, the mathematics that I was taught at school, in an apartheid education school, always taught me that you round up. You round up and you don't round down. And if a figure is closer to being rounded up, you round it up. So my rounding up then brings this to 900 billion rand. That will be announced today. That will be in 81 projects, 9 provinces, 22 source markets, and over 230,000 permanent jobs that will be created. Now, that has an impact on our economy. It has an impact on our people. This is only the start of an era of new growth and dynamism for the South African economy. The accountability framework is unchanged from the first drive. Every investment announcement that will be made here will be vetted and signed and will represent a firm commitment by business leaders in this room. Every year we will report back on what has been promised and what has been delivered. Now, as we seek to deepen our trade and investment relations as South Africa, we remain committed to maintaining policy certainty and to accelerating the momentum of the structural reform agenda that we are on. A question is often asked, is this momentum of reform sustainable? Will we see it being sustained into the future? And my simple answer is yes. The reform process that we are on now is irrevocable and irreversible because it is in the interest of our economy, of our people, that we should transform and reform our economy so as to make it inclusive, so that all South Africans can benefit. And all key stakeholders, be they business, they should invest and make profits. Be it labor, their workers should be well paid and get living wages. Is it communities? They must feel that when businesses invest in their environments, those businesses become good corporate citizens and be part of the community. As for government, we are the enablers. We will continue enabling businesses to grow, for we have one interest: grow the economy, get tax revenues, and continue to advance the interests of our people. We are creating the conditions for investment-led growth that is broad-based, inclusive, and durable. So let us all move forward together with confidence, with partnership, and with a shared commitment to enhance South Africa's future. For as you invest, you advance the interests of our country. As you invest, we know that you make profits. And South Africa is ready for business, it's open for business, and we have positioned it as a more conducive place to invest your money. You can depend on South Africa. We are reliable, we are dependable, and we are a good investment destination. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for the President of the Republic of South Africa. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that overview of all of our reforms, underscoring the point of the resilience of our economy, and also making the point around our transformation agenda, Mr. President. I think it's quite important to note that our agenda is an investment imperative. It's an imperative that will build a society of vested citizens that will underpin the country investment case. It's not a nice to have. I think it was quite an important point for you to raise. Thank you for that, Mr. President. And then for the ladies, please hold on to your lipsticks. There may very well be some young single men out there having recognized, shall we say, an investment opportunity for baby investment. Deputy President Paul Mashatile, sir, let me specifically acknowledge your presence as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving to a very interesting segment where we are going to be focusing on, indeed, some of the reforms the President has been speaking about. We're going to focus on South Africa's energy sector, and we're also going to talk a little bit about South Africa's transport sector. And the reason why we are focusing on these two is, I'm sure you appreciate, without reliable power or a reliable transport and logistics sector, it is very difficult to galvanize not only foreign investment, but even domestic investment. This is why we're going to be having on stage the Minister of Electricity, Dr. Cyril Ramaphosa, and Minister of Electricity and Energy. And we will also be outlining the latest reforms and investment opportunities in the sector. We'll also then be having the Minister of Transport, Ms. Barbara Creasy, who will be doing the same. Lots of exciting reforms taking place in the transport sector that's galvanizing private sector investment and partnership. Once they are done, we will have a series of three brief investment announcements. We've got three corporates that will be sharing some brief investment announcements with us. And this will just be a showcase of how we're translating policy into projects and also these opportunities into real implementation. The president was saying, we know that investors value execution, and we're going to be giving the stage to three such investors who've executed on their projects. But first up, please join me in welcoming on stage the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Cyril Ramaphosa.
Thank you very much, Program Director. My warm and sincere greeting to President Ramaphosa, Deputy President Mashatile, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Premiers, and everyone in your eminence. Minister Tau, when he was on the floor, he agitated us to follow the evidence, and I'm going to discover the science so that there's a full appreciation of the investment case in the country. I do imagine that when you make investment decision, it's not driven by affinity for one country over the other, but is a subject of, if you like, anticipated returns. As the president was making the point, at the macro political level, I think the case has been sufficiently made, the reform agenda that we are driving. So just allow me in a few minutes just to surface and discover the science. The legend might not be visible. Just for the moment, believe my interpretation of what is before you. President, there are 5 major jurisdictions in the world that have got the potential to give you maximum returns from a renewable energy point of view. The first one is the Northern Cape Namibia corridor. The other one is the western side of Chile. The other one is the Australian outback. The other one is sub-Sahara, the desert rather, the Sahara Desert, and the other one is in the Gulf. So in those areas, we have what we call the highest global horizontal irradiation. So what that means is that the total amount of shortwave solar PV that is received per unit area on a horizontal surface, in simple terms really, is the amount of yield. That's where you get it in those areas. You get up to 2,700 kilowatt hour per square meter. And South Africa is in the top 5 in the world. And of course, the wind speeds in the northern, the western side of the country, in particular the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape and parts of the Northern Cape, we can reach wind speeds of up to 10 meters per second. So that's the biggest yield that you have. So essentially your returns are guaranteed if you're to invest in South Africa. And then the second point to be made is the following, is that there is a relationship really around natural resource availability and also the issues of geopolitical stability. So the point we are making on a 2-dimensional Cartesian scale or plane, you map, as the slides will show you, on the x-axis your geopolitical stability, and on your y-axis the natural resource availability. So what you really want to do is to try and examine, of course, the natural resources are there, but there are other indicators that you are looking for you to invest in one country over the other. And one of those will include the issues of political stability, the prevalence of democracy, and freedom of movement, freedom of speech, issues around the health of the institutions, such as the financing sector, and also the legal instruments that are in place. And you can see there from the map that we rank amongst the best. So in the top quadrant there, it's ourselves, Morocco, and Namibia. So it's about outside just the health of your renewable energy resources. There are other indicators you are looking for to ensure that your investment is secure. Then the next question we attempt to answer is to try and explain the level of industrialization. And I think that the computation of per capita electricity consumption is an excellent indicator of Human Development Index and also GDP. So there has been studies that a rich body of literature that has been able to discover the relationship of Human Development Index and per capita electricity consumption, per capita electricity consumption and GDP growth, and it arrives at the conclusion that that relationship is that of direct proportionality. It doesn't argue that it's a causal relationship, but is that of direct proportionality. So in our country, what we're doing there is to map the level of penetration, what we call universal access, and also per capita electricity consumption. And you can see we're at the top right-hand corner there, meaning that we are both high on penetration, so we are at about 92% of universal access, and also from per capita consumption of electricity per inhabitants, we are sitting at about 4.2 megawatt per year. So that's important because you don't want, once you invest your money, the electrons are stranded. You want the comfort that domestically there exists sufficient demand to consume that which you are generating, and you are able to explain your, rather reach your returns. And also, we also know that South Africa accounts for 20% of the continent's total electricity demand is located in the country. So the point I'm making is that there's an insatiable appetite to consume that which is produced. And then as I move towards the end, the next question you ask is that, okay, I see the issues of the quality of the renewable assets, I see the political stability, I see the fact that there's increasing demand. Why should we believe you? Why should I invest my money here? So the point in answering that, we are not new in this space. So we've been in this journey for the past 13 years. And in that 13 years, we've got about 6 gigawatts of utility scale renewable independent power producers that are in the space. We also have embedded generation of about 7 gigawatts. And we also have private PPAs. So you don't have to wait for a government procurement program for you to invest. There can be private conversation, a generator and an off-taker. And of that, we've got 4 gigawatts. Why is that important? It is important because the industry has matured. On the supply side, the skill side, the industry side, there's a degree of readiness and familiarity with this environment. So we are unlikely going to have missteps. And of course, going into the future, our anticipation is that utility scale renewables are going to grow multiple fold, up to 5 times going into the future. And then we'll be introducing other energy sources like gas to power. And then how are we going to ensure that we reach financial close quicker? Because governments generally across the world are notorious for delaying projects with regards to permitting and licensing. So we have introduced instruments at the instruction and the insistence of the president. And I'll use just one example on how we're modernizing and expanding our transmission program. As the president has mentioned, 14,000 kilometers, 440 billion rand, the size of the ticket. So what we're doing what we call late-stage tender projects. So by that we mean by the time you come in, we'd have resolved the issue of servitude. Working with Minister McPherson, we are resolving that. We'll have resolved the issues of EIAs, working with Minister Okam. So when we say here's a corridor for you to build, all the regulatory and permitting requirements have been met. All that you do is to invest your money, get yellow plans, and start building. We're doing the same also. Thank you very much for the We're doing the same also on battery storage. What has stunted our battery program, President, was the fact that developers must look for land, enter into protracted, difficult negotiations with landowners. So what we are doing, we are procuring the land. You compete on price and technology and leave the land to us. We would have procured that. That's how we are going to do it going forward. Just the penultimate slide is to make the point that you see that we are generating a lot of electricity. The pipeline looks very healthy. The President shared the numbers with you. From a public procurement point of view, in the next 5 years, we are doing 30 gigawatts of new generation capacity. Over the next 15 years, 105 gigawatts. The next question you ask, who's going to consume this electricity? Now, a lot of you might know about the regional power pools, the interconnectedness of the countries in the region. South Africa has always provided the role of an anchor, the battery of the continent. So demand is going to be on the continent, on the back of the endowments in that space and the need for us to beneficiate at source, because we know that about 30% of all the requirements with regards, or endowments rather, are in sub-Saharan Africa. You need water and electricity for you to beneficiate. We see new opportunities on data centers. We are projecting in the immediate 400 megawatts. That is going to grow to about 2,500 megawatts. And then on the value addition with regards to critical minerals, that's new demand, and that's why I talk about the regional interconnectedness. So lastly, at a glance, you can see we're talking a major build program. Just on new generation capacity, 2.2 trillion rands of investment. Just on the transmission expansion, 440 billion rands of investment. As the President has said, we're cutting the red tape and rolling out the red carpet. And outside, you'll find a QR code. It will explain this investment. Remember, downstream the project value chain, we don't want you to spend the money on permitting and licensing. We'd have resolved that. So you'll get the QR code to get the details of this. Of course, we are accommodating the generation of Minister Mantashe and Minister Godongwana. There's a hard copy for you. You see, your relationship with a QR code is a different one. But thank you very much. The country is ready for business.
That is our Minister of Electricity and Energy. He has a lot of electricity and energy, as you can tell. Thank you, Minister. We appreciate that update and that masterclass on renewable energy. Next up, we're going to focus our attention on another key enabler of economic growth, and that is the transport sector. Significant reforms are already underway to improve performance, efficiency, and reliability across the South African transport system. And to give us more detail, please give a warm round of applause to the Minister of Transport, Ms. Barbara Creasy.
Good morning, everybody. Allow me to acknowledge His Excellency, President Ramaphosa, Deputy President Manshatile, fellow ministers and deputy ministers, premiers, mayors, ambassadors, high commissioners, CEOs and captains of industry, representatives of organized labor and civil society, ladies and gentlemen. As you heard from His Excellency the President, we are involved in a major process of rail reform, and this journey is guided by two important documents. The first is the National Rail Policy, and the second is the Freight Logistics Roadmap. And since these important documents were adopted in 2022 and 2023, we have made major strides in terms of the vertical unbundling of Transnet. You would be aware that we now have a Transnet infrastructure manager who is responsible for managing Transnet's infrastructure in a manner that will facilitate third-party participation. We have now established the board of the Transport Economic Regulator, and this regulator will in future be responsible for determining the tariffs for operators on the freight and passenger rail sector so that there is a level playing field. Last year, we brought out the first iteration of the network statement, what I like to call the menu and the price, and we intend very soon, in the first quarter of this year, to bring out the second version of the network statement that is going to give greater confidence to the 11 private freight operators who will begin to operate on the 1st of April next year in terms of long-term rail access, and also in terms of the fact that they will not need to purchase their own rail equipment. They can, in fact, lease that rail equipment from Roscoe's that will be set up. Very soon, we intend to release for public comment the National Rail Master Plan. And this is our vision of what both freight and passenger rail will look like from now until 2050. And of course, the importance of this Master Rail Plan is so that the market can have confidence in terms of investment and planning of rail infrastructure. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, we intend to enshrine all of these reforms in law, and this year we will release for public comment the National Rail Bill. Now, you would be aware that last year we issued two important requests for information. The first was for the 5 priority freight corridors and associated ports, and that involved requests for information for investment in the Transnet infrastructure program. And the second was a set of RFIs for investment in PRASA, and this included depots, fare collection, a passenger Roscoe, but also importantly, requests for information on rapid and high-speed rail from Gauteng to Messina, to eThekwini, and to Mbombela. Now, I'm pleased to say that as of the beginning of February this year, we have been able to issue the first request for participation for the Richards Bay Dry Bulk Terminal. And this request for participation will transform this terminal into a multi-user export hub. It will unlock private funding and expertise, and it will expand the current capacity of that port from 18.5 million tons per annum to 26.9. President said I can round up 27 million tons per annum. The second RFP that will be issued to shortlisted bidders in the first quarter of this financial year is the establishment of a rolling stock leasing company. And this would be a rolling stock leasing company that would be leasing out locos and wagons related to the freight sector. It would establish a dedicated leaseco entity, improve fleet efficiency and availability, and obviously attract private rolling stock investment. Later on in this first quarter, so we estimate it will probably be May, June, we intend to issue the request for proposal for the Ngqoqa Manganese Export Corridor. And this is the manganese export corridor and terminal that runs from the Northern Cape all the way to the port of Ngqoqa, and it is intended to create a seamless, scalable, and competitive corridor. So this is an important investment opportunity that we hope to release in May, latest June of this financial year. And lastly, and perhaps this is the most interesting request for proposal we will issue this year, is the request for proposal on the container corridor that runs from Gauteng to the port of Durban. You've heard in His Excellency's address the important work we are already doing in Pier 2 in Durban docks. And the idea is to develop a freight rail corridor that would be able to service that important port that we are creating. If you look at the future of rail in this country, and we've done a lot of mapping in terms of how we will move from the current plus minus 165 million tons of freight to 250 million. Obviously, we know that we are underperforming on the bulk mineral corridors. But what we know is that once we have upped performance on those corridors, we're close to saturation. And the future of rail in this country in terms of new opportunities really relates to container freight. And so we see this opportunity to invest in the container rail corridor from Gauteng to eThekwini as being a very interesting and exciting opportunity that will boost performance and competitiveness and will transform this into the primary intermodal corridor in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope to release this particular RFP to market in November. And with that, my time is up, and I have to thank you for your attentiveness.
Thank you very much to our Minister of Transport, very clear, and I'm pretty sure lots of note-taking there on the timelines and the opportunities. We are now moving to our announcements. We've got 3 gentlemen from 3 companies that are going to be joining us very, very briefly here on stage to talk us through some of the commitments that they have made. First up, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage the President and CEO of SAIC, Mr. Simon Baloyi.
Thank you, Andile. His Excellency President Ramaphosa, Your Excellency Deputy President Paul Mashatile, Honorable Ministers, and since I've been given 2 minutes, I'll say all protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to all of you. For over 75 years, SAIC has been key into the energy security of this country. And there's never been any time like this where all of us are reminded that energy security is national security. And it gives me a great privilege and honor to announce that over the next 3 years, SAIC is going to invest just over 60 billion rands to sustain our operations, to make sure This amount of money is going to make sure that we continue to sustain our operations. We invest into the new mines that we need for the coal that we need in Secunda. We invest in infrastructure that's critical to sustain all our operations. This amount of money is not only going to allow us to sustain our operations, but to build a very strong foundation, a foundation where we can produce sustainable fuels and sustainable chemicals. This is a very fantastic opportunity for organization, and this we cannot do only without the support of partners and government. So we're working with government to make sure that we've got regulatory support, not only at home, but abroad as well. To give an example, our Secunda facility has an opportunity to export about 2 billion euros of sustainable aviation fuels to the EU. However, we need to work together through this clean investment trade partnership to make sure that that is possible. Our company will continue to be invested in South Africa, and you may ask why. Because we know that when South Africa does well, Africa will do well. And when Africa does well, the whole continent, the whole world will do well. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon, for that. And you were 50 seconds earlier. That's a CEO who does not waste time, 60 billion rands, bada-bim, bada-boom. Next up is the VP for Africa, Middle East and Turkey at Meta. Please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming on stage Kojo Boache.
Thank you, Program Director, and thank you, Honourable Minister Dr. Ramaphosa. His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa. His Excellency Paul Mashatile, Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa. Honourable Minister Parks Tau, thank you for organising this amazing event and for your wonderful words earlier. Honourable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Premiers, members of the diplomatic corps, friends in the development community, Secretary General of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, captains of industry, extremely good-looking ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Kojo Boache. I'm the Vice President of Public Policy for Africa, Middle East and Turkey with Meta, and I'm delighted to be here to make this announcement about our decision. And given the speed and focus with which we need to move, I would like to confirm that Meta has decided to land its next subsea cable, Waterworth, right here in South Africa. At more than 50,000 kilometers long, Waterworth is our most ambitious subsea cable project ever, connecting 5 continents. And it will land in 3 locations here in South Africa. 1 in KwaZulu-Natal and 2 in the Western Cape. And if there was any evidence needed, if it were needed, of the long-term relationships and value that we have in South Africa and see in South Africa, it is this project. Project Waterworth will sit alongside our 2 Africa projects, which we recently completed. Currently, the world's longest submarine cable connecting East to West Africa, or if you're the other way inclined, West to East Africa for the first time, but also landing in 40 locations across Africa, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. And together, these investments, we hope and believe, will deliver 15 times more capacity than all the legacy cables at this time. But more importantly, they are projected to contribute more than $150 billion in economic impact to the sub-Saharan Africa region by 2035. Despite the compelling relationships and value, long-term value that we see in South Africa, some may ask why South Africa? To all of us at Meta, it's clear. Infrastructure investment at the scale with which we do it requires policy clarity and, while we are risk takers, some level of predictability. South Africa's digital master plan, its forthcoming data and cloud policy, as well as the national AI policy framework, demonstrate this government's unceasing effort to give investors like Meta and many more the clarity and predictability that we need. That matters deeply when you are committing billions of dollars in global infrastructure that has a multi-decade lifespan. The willingness to engage in genuine policy dialogue through the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies gave us the confidence that this government, as His Excellency said before, is pro-innovation and sees digital infrastructure and services like Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Meta AI, and many of those provided by other tech companies as the backbone of South Africa's economy and indeed the world's. When you make announcements like the one I'm making today, they are incredibly exciting. But they are also daunting because executing projects like this at this scale is hard. Having just completed To Africa alongside amazing South African partners, including MTN, Vodacom, and WIOC, we have learned many lessons and understand the challenges firsthand. Subsea cable projects are complex. Environmental, coastal, municipal permitting, going across provinces and connecting infrastructure terrestrially, and tackling that all-important last mile challenge, taking the connectivity we bring to the shoreline to those who most need on the coast, is hard, and there are many hurdles. But partnership, as Meta, formerly Facebook, has always said, is the key to everything we do. And here in South Africa, we believe we have partners who are ready, willing, and most importantly, able to tackle these complex challenges with us. Of course, for Meta, when you provide infrastructure and have 3 billion people using your applications every day, you know that building infrastructure and providing services are not enough. And that's why our investment, Meta's investment, must be and continue to be holistic. And that's why we'll continue investing in digital training programs and add to the 430,000 South Africans who have been recipients of that training. We'll continue working with the entrepreneurs, 54,000 who have come past, who receive our support so far, and we'll add to that. And we'll continue working with the small businesses. And as His Excellency said, so many of them are envisaged and run by young people and women, and we will continue targeting them. We will continue providing our safety campaigns in all 11 South African languages, official South African languages, which has already been downloaded, used by 10 million South Africans. We'll add to that number. And we are currently and will successfully work with the Department of Public Service Administration to build an AI platform which will be used by over 1 million public servants. And as the world focuses on AI, and as South Africa does, and its amazing potential, we'll continue working with South African startups like Fundamate, a beneficiary of our AI Impact Accelerator, which helps more than 4 million learners prepare for exams. So what comes next? Project Waterworth will land in 2030, and it will make telling contributions to South Africa, becoming a regional digital hub, not just a landing point for submarine cables, but a center for data, infrastructure, AI innovation, and digital skills that serves South Africa, South Africans, and just as importantly to Meta, hundreds of millions of Africans across this continent. My friends, the conditions that compelled Meta to make this investment, policy leadership, strategic ambition, and genuine partnership are the same conditions that will compel others to invest here in South Africa. And the infrastructure we are building is designed to carry not just Meta's ambitions, but the ambitions of companies, individuals, and people represented in this room. But most importantly, the people that we all seek to serve. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Kojo, and thanks, of course, to Meta for that very important investment. Lastly, we have the CEO of Cornubia 957. Please welcome on stage Mr. Frank Mnee.
Thank you, Program Director. Your Excellency, Mr. President, Deputy Presidents, Honorable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Premiers, distinguished delegates, investors and partners. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a real privilege to be here today to share the project that we have launched in Durban, Sri Lanka Hills Tech Connect, a tech hub. This is a 25 billion rand investment into Durban and into the future of South Africa's digital economy. This development is built around three key pillars: BPO, AI-ready data center, and AI automated warehouse, and all to be the first in Africa. To deliver this at a global standard, we have partnered with Huawei. And Huawei brings not just technology, but a proven global experience at scale, based on mature, globally tested platforms that connects people, devices, and services into one intelligent ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, our BPO platform in the Tech Hub is designed for 35,000 seats, creating around 100,000 jobs, mainly for our young people. It's a gateway between South Africa and the world, a platform where South African talents connect to the global opportunities. Innovations become real economic outputs. As our former President Nelson Mandela once said, it always seems impossible until it is done. And that is very true. But today, I stand before you as proof that when we come together with a shared purpose and collective efforts, what maybe seemed impossible becomes possible. Ladies and gentlemen, my ambition is simple. That is to position Durban as the Silicon Valley of Africa. And lastly, I want to say, Durban is ready, and the world is watching, and I invite you all to be part of this journey and be part of history in the making. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank, for that announcement. When I was confirming backstage, Lerato, on how to pronounce Frank's surname.
Yes.
So Frank's surname is Mni, M-N-I. I ask him, so how do I pronounce it? He says, no, it's just like Umnisi.
Okay.
So thank you to Frank Umnisi.
Rainmaker.
Indeed, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to that time where we're going to take a short break. We're going to be having some well-deserved refreshments. I think it's happening on level 4, is it?